This is the full story of how Chief Anthony Enahoro fought for women's political rights in colonial Nigeria. On January 20, 1953, Enahoro, a member of the Action Group Party in the Ishan Division, then part of the Old Western Region, sponsored a motion where he expressed regret that there were no women members in the House. He urged the Lieutenant Governor to exercise his powers under Section 34 of the Nigeria Constitution Order in Council 1951 to appoint at least one woman member to the House. Enahoro did not stop there. He remarks that due to the slow development of the women folk in the country and the discriminatory nature of the electoral laws, not a single woman had secured a place in the House. He suggested that the government might soon consider adopting the Indian system of reserving seats for women. Enahoro further stated that if the motion were accepted, three key factors should be taken into consideration. Firstly, that the appointment should be representative. Secondly, that women of moral integrity should be appointed. And thirdly, that women of intelligence should be selected. Enahoro's motion came at a critical time for women who, up until that year, had only occupied seats in local government councils. However, women were absent from Nigeria's regional and central legislative institutions and had no voice in major issues that affected their lives. In December 1949, when the Widows and Orphans Pension of African Officers Bill was debated on the floor of the Western House of Assembly, it was roundly rejected. It is worth noting that throughout the duration of the Second World War, press notices announcing the government's regrets at the casualties sustained by units of the Nigerian regiment serving overseas were published. For example, in August 1941, the Comet published the names of fallen Nigerian soldiers under various categories such as killed in action, died of wounds received in active service, died on active service, missing, believed killed on active service, accidentally killed on active service, wounded and missing on active service, and wounded in action on active service. Their widows and orphans left behind necessitated the drafting of the bill in the first place. With the 1951 Macpherson Constitution, the old-timer nominees in the House of Assembly were swept away and replaced by an elected crop of young and fiery nationalists, such as the 29-year-old Enahoro. Adegoke Adelabu, the peculiar Penkelemesi of the National Council of Nigeria and the Cameroons NCNC, who sat on the opposition bench, gave the motion his full commendation, saying that if past performers were taken into consideration in appointing a woman, there would undoubtedly be no difficulty in finding one who would sit on the NCNC bench. An avid reader of Nigerian history would know that Adelabu was talking about Mrs. Funmilayo Ransome Kuti, the leader of the NCNC women in the Western region. She had also been a member of the party's 7-person delegation that sailed to England in 1947 to discuss the Richards Constitution with the Secretary of State for the Colonies, Arthur Critch Jones. Support for the motion came from Chief Joseph Odunjo, the renowned Yoruba poet from the Egba division. Unfortunately, not everyone agreed. Prince Adedoyin Adeleke, a lawyer and a future Speaker of the Assembly, objected to the idea on the grounds of its unconstitutionality. He said that such a decision and discretion lay with the Lieutenant Governor, Mr. Hugo Frank Marshall. As we know, the latter had the power to nominate and renominate special members of the legislature. He did this from ranks involved in mining, banking, shipping, and so on, which in those years were exclusively male domains. Another staunch opponent of the motion was Chief Dennis Osadebe from the Asaba division. A legal practitioner, he is best remembered in history for holding several political posts, including being the leader of the NCNC opposition in the Western House of Assembly and the President of the Senate, and of course, the Premier of the Midwest. Osadebe was quoted as saying, "The order in council provided seats for interests not otherwise represented. And don't husbands, uncles, and nephews of women in the house adequately represent the women's interests?" Interestingly, Osadebe's view still holds some credence in Nigeria today. The motion was saved by the legal secretary in the House, who said the Lieutenant Governor would be within his right to appoint women. This seemed to convince those opposed to the idea to change their minds. When subsequently put to the vote, Enahoro's motion was unanimously accepted. The underrepresentation of women in the House, which was partly linked to this corrupt electoral system, nevertheless seemed by that time so indefensible that the members themselves, who were all men in the 1950s, asked the British Lieutenant Governor to give women one of the 3 seats reserved for special members. This taking of a position in favor of women also reveals the members' wish to choose women who agreed with them. However, Governor Marshall appointed Mrs. Remilekun Iseoluwa Ayedun, an Egba teacher from Abeokuta, who became the first woman in Nigeria and indeed West Africa to take a seat in the regional legislature. Interestingly, this appointment was criticized by Mrs. Elizabeth Adekogbe, who said that Ayedun was chosen not because of her political struggles in the interest of women, but due to her religiousness, as she was very active in the Anglican Church and was the wife of Reverend W.O. Ayedun, who presided over the St. Paul's Anglican Church, Igbore, in Abeokuta. Ayedun was also the president of the Christian Ladies Progress Union and secretary of the Diocesan Women's Guild since the 1940s. Adekogbe argued that Mrs. Ayedun appeared to have been appointed because she was a respected figure in the Christian community. The Ijebu feminists also believed that the ruling Action Group Party had a hand in the appointment, as Ayedun's husband was a cousin of the ruling Alake, Oba Samuel Ladapo Ademola II, who was close and had sympathies for the Action Group Party. But Ayedun was not a rookie in politics, as she had defeated Mrs. Funmilayo Ransom Kuti to win a seat on the Egba Alake section of the Egba Central Council in 1952. Nevertheless, as the first woman legislator in Nigeria, Ayedun's appointment made the front pages of the newspapers such as the Daily Service and the Nigerian Tribune. Enahoro's historical motion for Nigerian women to have a seat in the legislative houses in the country will always be remembered, as 2 years later, Lady Oyinkan Abayomi replaced Mrs. Ayedun, and in 1959, Mrs. Margaret Ekpo and Janet Nwadiogo Mokelu were appointed as special members in the Eastern House of Chiefs. However, in the Northern region, no woman was nominated.